Avery, whose show is this? And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge Podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, Senior Lakers Insider for Clutch Points. And today on the show, we have a lot actually to talk about. According to Sam Amick of The Athletic, Dan Wojcicki, I believe, also contributed to some of this reporting. Jeanie Buss, part of that agreement of transfer of power involves her sticking around for another 5 years as governor. So I have some questions and thoughts on that development. We have more reporting done on the Giannis / Jokic plan, and how the Lakers and Clippers are positioning themselves for this. I believe the Heat are also doing a lot of that same stuff. We have further confirmation in that article from The Athletic about LeBron's contract situation. According to Amick, the Lakers would not offer a contract to LeBron this summer that would extend beyond next year. That was something that I talked about, I believe, yesterday on the show. So we'll talk. We'll get into some of all of that. And then obviously at the end of the show, as always, I will update you guys on the latest that I am hearing as far as free agency and trades and all of that good stuff, and answer whatever questions y'all have in the moment. As always, I'm going to be, after we're done here, grabbing this audio, editing it, cutting it up, putting it on the RSS feed as well. So, the schedule is still kind of up in the air compared to what it usually is, right? Where those of you who subscribe to the RSS feed, wherever it is that you get your pods, preferably on Odyssey, those usually go at midnight Eastern ish, and that's your pod for the following morning. We'll get back to that as soon as we possibly can. But in this time of year where you get so much breaking news, you can't quite do that. So that's the plan here for next couple, maybe few weeks or so. As far as I see, I have a question here from D Smith asking if I have a Discord. I do. So let me put that in the chat so y'all can pop in if you guys want. So invite people, and I will copy the Discord invite and put that right there. And yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Starting with the report about Jeanie, because of everything that we're kind of talking about here, I think this is kind of the biggest news, and I have the most questions about it. So we'll start there. Quick reminder to those of you who are popping in, maybe checking out the show for the first time, please hit that subscribe button there on YouTube. If you guys are watching on Twitter, head on over to youtube.com/@LakersLounge to find the show there. If you guys are listening to this in the morning via pod, please hit subscribe and then rate and review the pod wherever it is that you guys get your pods, preferably on Odyssey, because I'm a company man. And let's again, Jeanie Buss, according to Sam Amick and The Athletic, will be Lakers governor for the following 5 years. First off, we knew that there was some kind of transition plan in place. We also know how much the Lakers mean to Jeanie Buss. So I don't think there was a world, or there would ever be a world where Jeanie sells and is like, all right, finally, I'm out. I don't think that would ever happen. But 5 years is a little while, to be completely honest. Now, it doesn't honestly matter how long she remains the governor, whether that is just in name, if she's a figurehead, if it doesn't matter if or I guess so long as Mark Walter, the sale goes final. It's supposed to go final during Q3, which we are currently in right now, or Q4. If Mark Walter, when that sale goes final, injects all of the resources that he can into the Lakers, that's the first step. Whether Jeanie is the governor at the time when that happens or not, I don't care. First step, and all that I really care about, is injection of resources into the Lakers to catch them up to modern times. First and foremost, that's what is going to happen, and that's what's always needed to happen. The next bit of it where, the relationship with Jeanie Buss really kind of matters is how open will Jeanie and Rob and Linda and Kurt and Tim Harris, how open will all of that kind of group of decision makers in the Lakers organization, how open will they be to those new resources, or to a reorganization of the Lakers? Will Mark Walter be allowed to reorganize the Lakers, and be able to say, like, all right, Jeanie, you're still the governor, but everybody else is in, we're in observation mode on everybody else. And would she be okay with that? Will she be okay with a hard look at the way that the Lakers make decisions now? George Sedano, who was just on the show with me yesterday, we talked about how frustrated Brooke Lopez was during his time with the Lakers. And we talked about Magic Johnson and how frustrated he was, after he had just departed the Lakers. And he talked about how frustrating it was to make any kind of a decision there, because, Linda had to be involved and on board, and Jeanie had to be involved and on board, and Kurt and Tim and Rob and all of these people, and how that would tend to kind of faction off the organization. And to me, I just don't think that's any way to operate. I just think it's too disorganized. It's not sustainable. It's not replicable, because on any given day, like, let's put it this way. Here on the lounge, it's a committee of one. Right now, there are people that I talk to for advice and how maybe to best build this thing out moving forward. And it's certainly conversations that I'm going to have a lot moving forward as this thing continues to grow. But for the most part, for me, it's fairly simple. Do I think this is a good idea? Yes. Cool. Let's continue. Let's push it forward. Let's build that way. It would be really kind of tricky if I spoke to Jen and really considered her input on the Lakers lounge as any kind of gospel, because she doesn't know anything about this, right? Like, it's if or even somebody who does know more about this, right? Harrison, you guys know, he and I built Locked On Lakers together. Or if it was Pete, he and I built Locked On Lakers after Harrison left. This is these are two people that I really greatly trust. And if I went to them for input on a decision that I was about to make, and then their input was like, don't make it, and I was like, oh shit, now I can't. Decisions would never be made if you're looking for unanimous belief in every single thing that you're looking to do. And I think that's sometimes where the Lakers get themselves into trouble, is this conversation between, again, it's Jeanie Buss, it's Linda Rambis, it's Kurt Rambis, it's Tim Harris, and it's Rob Pelinka. And then occasionally, like, the Bus Bros are there, and every so often Magic wanders into the office, and every so often Phil Jackson is consulted on a coach or whatever. And it's simultaneously too many cooks in the kitchen, but not enough expertise in said kitchen, because there aren't enough basketball people there. You have a lot of people who've been involved in basketball for a really, really long time. But if your only experience is by way of the Lakers, it's just not a very. And then, I've talked a lot about the lack of diversity within the Lakers organization. Take a look at some of those pictures of their draft room on draft nights, as recently as last year, there weren't too many pictures of the draft room this year because they only had the number 55 pick. But you look in that draft room and there are very, very few uh people with different backgrounds, very different, it's all a bunch of white people. It's all a bunch of mostly white guys. And what that can lead to is not enough creativity and not enough. And it's not just cultural, it's backgrounds. It's, like if it's a whole bunch of Bus siblings, they only know one way of operating. If it's a whole bunch of Lakers people, they only know one way of operating. But if for most of these organizations, they'll go out and they'll poach people, and and the people that they poach, they will bring them into the fold, and they'll talk about what made whatever organization they were just coming from a little bit stronger. And those ideas will be brought into the fold, and you strengthen the decision making process by way of that diversity. In the Lakers case, it's like, well, we've always done it this way, we'll always do it this way, and that's that. And if this way, if the this way in this case is factoring in the input of a Linda Rambis or a Tim Harris or even Kurt Rambis, who frankly is probably not qualified to help run an organization, then it's you can see how stuff falls through the cracks. You can see how there would be some issues in that decision making process. And whenever Mark Walter officially buys the Lakers, what I'm going to be looking for is, are you going to go out and get Masai Ujiri, especially as you're pursuing Giannis? Are you going to go out and get Masai Ujiri, and are you going to bring him into the front office, and are you going to let him work with Rob and get those two people to work together in the same way that you did with Andrew Friedman and Farhan Zaidi and Alex Anthopoulos and so on and so forth? Like, is that something that you're going to be looking to do? And part of what made that work so well was Andrew Friedman, as I hope you guys checked out the episode with Eric Steven and myself a little while ago. He talked about how not challenged Andrew Friedman always is by other people who are also really smart baseball people. How will Rob Pelinka handle that kind of a situation? So whether it's like replacing Rob or supplementing Rob or whatever, the big thing here is you need more basketball people. And the other part of it too is, the more diverse the Lakers front office becomes, you have people with better relationships with other front offices out there in the NBA. As things currently stand, Rob has a good relationship, I would say, with Joe Cronin, though they haven't been able to come to an agreement on a trade yet. He and Danny Ainge negotiate really, really often, and they have been able to come to an agreement in years past. He used to have a really good relationship with Nico Harrison, and well, I do believe he has a good relationship with Sean Marks of the Brooklyn Nets. They just made a trade this last year. But outside of that, I think Rob is one of the more polarizing people throughout the entire league in terms of decision makers in various front offices. You compare that to a team like the Clippers, right, who bring in all kinds of people at all times. And the thinking there is, well, if we're having a negotiation and say somebody doesn't particularly like, oh God, who's the little guy who's there? Shoot, the head of the Clippers basketball ops team, Clippers GM, Lawrence Frank. If a team that the Clippers are looking to make a deal with feels a certain way about Lawrence Frank, but they do like talking to Monty McNair a little bit more, guess who's probably going to be sitting in on that call a little bit more? It'll be Monty McNair. And they'll look if they and they'll see if you can kind of enhance those negotiations and make them a little bit more productive than they would be if they were just dealing with Lawrence Frank. And again, like, that's the thing about diversity. It's funny, especially in this time and age where DEI is seen as this 4-letter word, even though it's 3 letters. It's not a matter of like hiring people from different backgrounds for the sake of hiring people from different backgrounds. Every organization historically that has invested in diversity efforts have benefited from them. And historically speaking, it's those companies that have refused to modernize in terms of diversity, whether it's cultural or even just background or the way that people think. That diversity has always helped every step along the way. And the Lakers, I think, are one of those organizations that, especially in the NBA, that has fallen completely behind the times in terms of its diversity. So yeah, Jeanie Buss is going to be involved and be the governor, or the at least in name, for the next 5 years. We'll see what, this next couple of years I think are going to be really interesting to watch, to what extent Jeanie and her crew are held to account, while Mark Walter gets a closer view and a more productive view of how the Lakers are run. And at the end of these 2 years, and the reason I use 2 years, so at the end of these 2 years, basically, we'll see what decisions Mark Walter pushes for, and how that all of that plays out. And the reason I use 2 years as an example here is because Mark Walter bought the Dodgers, I believe, in 2012, and then Andrew Friedman was hired 2 years later. And during those 2 years, Mark Walter and TWG and Stan Kasten, they paid close attention to how Ned Colletti and the Lakers were being run, or the Dodgers were being run, and eventually made the decision, okay, we're going to go hire that guy who has kept the Tampa Bay Rays competitive in the AL East with the New York Yankees and the Boston Red Sox. And obviously that wound up being a really good decision. For the Lakers, 2 years puts us at the summer of 2027. And we're going to, this winds up being a perfect segue into the next bit that we're going to talk about, this Giannis Jokic plan. But in 2 years, right, especially as everything is being kind of geared towards maintaining flexibility, presenting a real threat to sign a Giannis Antetokounmpo or to sign a Nikola Jokic, and then use that threat to pressure those teams into maybe a slightly lopsided trade that lands one of those two stars in LA. As that is the plan, if you don't execute it and we get to 2027 and neither of those other stars are on the Lakers roster, guess whose feet are going to be pretty close to the fire at that moment? It'll be Rob Pelinka. And if they aren't able to execute on that plan after, again, potentially wasting the LeBron Luka era and what little we had of it potentially, if you get to that summer of 2027 and the Lakers don't land another superstar, then that would be a situation like Stan Kasten and Mark Walter had, where it was like, look, we like you, Ned, but we think that Friedman is better suited to guide us into the future of the Los Angeles Dodgers. And I believe Ned Colletti stayed on as a consultant, and then eventually, I think he still does stuff with Sportsnet LA. Maybe you see that same kind of situation play out, especially again if the Lakers don't land either Giannis or Jokic. So we'll segue. We'll use that to segue into the second part of this show. But yeah, as far as Jeanie staying on for 5 years, it's not as simple as, yeah, she's our governor. She'll be spending Mark Walter's money. He'll be injecting resources. He'll be hiring people to supplement the Lakers in the way that he wants them to be run, even while Jeanie Buss is the team's governor. And if that isn't how this plays out, and we just get 5 years of the same stuff that we've been watching for, the last 5 years, then obviously I'll have a problem with it. Amick went further into the plan that the Lakers and the way that he framed it, the Lakers and Clippers both have for the way that they're handling this offseason so far, and their goal of maintaining flexibility for the summer of 2026, upon which time The goal, I believe, for both of those teams will be to trade for a freshly extended either Nikola Jokic or Giannis Antetokounmpo. And look, I'm not going to sit here and say do not work towards signing Giannis Antetokounmpo. That is not something I would ever say as host of a Los Angeles Lakers podcast, because that is the way that the Lakers have operated over the years, right? They either position themselves for a superstar or they have one land in their laps. One way or another, we have been able to, as Lakers fans, go from Jerry West and Wilt Chamberlain to Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to Kobe and Shaq, and then Kobe and Powell, and then eventually LeBron and AD, and then now it's LeBron and Luka. Basically, every era, a top two-ish player has been a Laker at some point, if not higher, on that list in each era. And for the Lakers, that has led to the 17 championships that they get to hang on in the crypto.com arena and or moneylaundering.com arena, whichever ones you prefer. I still prefer Staples. But the like if what it comes down to is like, yeah, I'm fine positioning yourself for, and I'm fine with that being the goal, right? Because it makes sense that your goal should be to go out and get the superstar. But what's tricky here is that in this case, the Lakers have one of the superstars that all of these teams are positioning themselves for. And yeah, that should give you a bit of a hands up on a bit of an advantage over some of those other teams that are trying to convince Luka to get there, or that will be trying to convince Giannis to go to their team. But as we saw with like Kawhi, right? Kawhi didn't want to play with LeBron. And Kawhi, and now the Lakers thought that they were getting Kawhi, and they were really bleeping sure of it. Like I told that, George and I started to tell that story of the night that we were in Vegas all together when it was reported that Kawhi was going to the Clippers and that Paul George was going to the Clippers. Going into that dinner, all the conversation was, yeah, the Lakers think they got Kawhi. It's just a matter of time. Now it turns out that the Clippers, Uncle Dennis seemed to like the Clippers offer a little bit more. Kawhi, I don't think, there's some reports that out there that, again, he didn't really want to play with LeBron. Kawhi wanted his own organization and stuff like that. And look, like, end of the day, the Lakers didn't get Kawhi. Despite thinking they were getting him. Right now, the Lakers are super confident that they're going to be able to retain Luka and that he's going to sign his extension and that they have him in the bag for the foreseeable future. And I think, like, based on everything I've heard and the way that Luka has kind of operated over the course of his entire career, that's probably a fairly safe assumption, if not really safe assumption to make. But it doesn't change the fact that whether it's the Denver Nuggets, right, who have hired Jared Dudley and have hired JJ Barea, and we know that Jokic is really close with Luka. So does they're kind of lining up the ducks to pursue Luka in summer from now. We know Amick in that piece talked at length about the things that the Clippers are looking to do to position themselves for whether it's Giannis and or Luka as well. And then obviously you have the Heat, and you have basically every team. The Bucks, right, are probably going to do whatever they possibly can to entice a star there that would keep Giannis in Milwaukee. So I could probably, there are probably several other teams that are kind of looking at next summer, especially now that it's being so widely reported. This handful of teams are approaching next summer this way. There's a reason nobody had cap space this year, and wouldn't you know it, a whole bunch of teams are working towards cap space next year. But if everybody is working towards cap space next year, that should give you a bit of an advantage. Like, I know I've talked a lot about one offer that, say, Miami has, or one price that is out there on Wiggins. And if if it is to be believed that they're demanding Rui and Connect and a first round pick and an expiring contract, I would say kick rocks, Pat. No, I'm not interested. But there's also, some stuff out there that Miami, in an effort to clear their books for the summer of Giannis and Jokic and Luka, are looking to move Wiggins potentially for just expiring money. If that's the case, then that makes your team better now, and it just gives you a big expiring contract to trade for Giannis or Jokic or whoever when the time comes. So, yeah, I don't know. I still find myself split on it. I'm never going to say do anything that would completely wreck your chances at Giannis. And I don't think trading for an Andrew Wiggins on an expiring player option would wreck your chances at Giannis. I wouldn't trade the first round pick because it would be good to be able to go to those teams and say, look, we have 3 first rounders that we're able to trade. Here's a couple of pick swaps as well. Here's Thiero, here is Reeves, here is whoever it is that you really, really want. We'll give you the player that you want a little bit less than that, because that's how a lot of these negotiations tend to go. And let's make a trade that is at least somewhat respectable. And if you don't, do that trade, then Giannis might not sign his extension, and we will have the cap space to sign him at season's end or after this upcoming season. Like, that to me seems like a perfectly viable plan, while also remaining competitive for the season. Like, I really truly believe, especially if it's just for expiring contracts, maybe the Lakers might even be able to hold on to Rui. I'd have to look at the numbers on that, but still, it's like, I don't know. I get really, really nervous at the idea of, and I know that the Lakers would never do any of this without talking to Luka and without getting his at least expressed interest in playing with Giannis or in playing with Jokic, depending on what the Lakers have to do to position themselves for that outcome of whatever summer. Totally understand. I don't think they're so dumb as to, do all of this and not talk to Luka. But Luka's also a competitor. And it's easy for him to, like, right now in early July, if Rob or whoever is going to him and saying, hey, this is what we're thinking about doing. All of what we're doing is to try to give ourselves a good chance at getting you a, Jokic or Giannis. Are you okay with that? And it's easy for him to say, yeah, I'm cool with it now. But then when you start the season and the Lakers don't have a point of attack defender that they clearly need, because that player's contract would go 1 year beyond what they're comfortable with in this plan, how's Luka going to feel about it in that moment, in the heat of that moment? He already went into this last postseason with Jackson Hayes as their starting big. And we saw how that postseason turned out. If both of his trips to the postseason are with substandard rosters, and he is now known at the beginning of his tenure with the Lakers as somebody who can't get them out of the first round or whatever. Now look, like, maybe there are players that the Lakers could go out and get and remain competitive or make themselves competitive too. That's what they're working on doing. But if these kind of hardline rules that they have in place to position themselves for these superstars after the season, if that does lead to Luka or Lakers fans kind of side-eyeing Luka, like, AD won us a championship, why can't you get out of the first round? And if ESPN and all these other platforms are starting every show in the morning with, is Luka the loser that Nico thought he was? How's Luka going to feel about it then? And I don't know that I'm really willing to risk that in this first summer with Luka, on a summer, by the way, where he can also sign one of those extensions, that would go a long way in convincing some of these guys to ink their names on a Lakers contract whenever they get that opportunity. So it's a lot going on. And I don't think there is obviously a perfect way to do any of this. If they weren't positioning themselves for Luka, there's a good chance there'd be plenty of Lakers fans who'd be like, "Wait, what?" Or for Giannis, if landing Andrew Wiggins tangibly affected your chances at landing Giannis, and they did so anyway, I could understand Lakers fans who'd be like, "Wait, huh?" But I just don't believe that is the case. The way that these things go is superstar X informs team Y that they would like to be traded. And then like a week or so later, you get the list of teams that player would like to be traded to. And then a week or so later, the team, that team Y will talk to team Z, the team that player really, really wants to go to, and they'll see what the makeup of a trade could be. And at that time, it will be on that team to have stuff that team Y would actually want. And I think Andrew Wiggins on a $30 million expiring contract would really, by the way, you're going to be trading for a player making like $70 million. So you're going to need a lot of money to go out in that trade. And as it stands right now, either that or you're going to have to open up a ton of cap space. As it stands right now, the Lakers might be able to assume or to bring Giannis into some of that cap space, but it also depends on who the Lakers might have under contract at that time. And if you have like Andrew Wiggins on your books and you have like $40 million in cap space beyond that, that's the money that you need to match that up with so you can trade for Giannis into that cap space while sending out the expiring money that Milwaukee would be looking for. Expiring and productive, by the way, money that Milwaukee would be looking for on top of the draft picks and on top of the pick swaps and whatever. So I don't know if and I'm not saying that this is definitely what's going on. There are, I would say, conflicting stories being told out there where if you talk, depending on who you're talking to, it's either Miami is asking for too much, or now as more and more and more noise mounts behind this Giannis Jokic plan, Miami is saying, no, the Lakers don't want to trade for Wiggins' contract. That's what makes my job so freaking fun. The fact that I have to juggle those two stories and figure out where the truth lies somewhere in the middle. But at the end of the day, I would say that, I support pursuit of Giannis and Jokic and stuff like that, but I don't think that it should be so hard lined that the Lakers would pass up on players who would eventually be used to trade for Jokic anyway, or Giannis anyway. Let's talk another little detail, tucked within that Amick piece was a look at LeBron's contract negotiations, of which there were actual negotiations this year for the first time since LeBron came to the Lakers. Here, I'm reading this directly. So, of all the Lakers' choices made recently, their handling of James's contract was as telling as any. They showed no willingness to discuss a contract beyond this upcoming season with 40-year-old LeBron James, and thus made it clear that the shift toward Luka Doncic as their franchise centerpiece and the youth movement that comes with it. Luka is 26. He's not freaking Max Christie. Is the top priority. James picked up his player option worth $52.6 million. When James's contract decision was publicly revealed, it spoke such a volume about the state of his current relationship with the Lakers that his longtime agent, Clutch Sports CEO Rich Paul, shared a public message about his concern, or the concerns James has about this approach, end quote. Obviously, we've talked about those quotes plenty. So, I said yesterday on the show that the starting point of the kind of friction between the Lakers and LeBron was LeBron in clutch anticipating getting another 1-and-1 type deal for at or near the max with a no trade clause on tacked onto that deal. Um, Now, if you talk to people a little bit closer to clutch, the indication is that no such offer was ever made. And then if you talk to people a little bit closer to the Lakers, the indication is that it was made clear that's what the expectation was. And the Lakers were like, no. And as a result, and really the result is all that matters here, LeBron opts into that $53 million contract. And Rich Paul releases those quotes releases that statement to Shams Charania of ESPN. Again, the truth lies somewhere in the middle, but in this case, all that matters is the end result. And the end result here is LeBron James on a $53 million expiring contract that I don't think he's all that thrilled to be on. And the reason that, again, I talked about this Jokic Giannis plan, and the reason it's so tricky is because we just saw, again, LeBron have a season, an all NBA caliber season, and Luka is getting himself into the best shape that he's been in a little while. And both of those guys, I'm told, are pretty excited to play together this upcoming season. But this team is still so clearly far behind where it needs to be to maximize the opportunity that the Lakers have with LeBron James and Luka Doncic. And one quote that I always kind of go back to, and I'm going to paraphrase it here because I didn't pull it up. But one thing that I always kind of go back to is this notion from Rob Pelinka when they first got LeBron, and then I think he repeated it another time or two since they've had LeBron. This notion of, while you have one of the all-time greats in NBA history, you owe it to not just your fan base, but to fans of the sport and to fans of the league to maximize your window with that player. And I would ask Rob if I could. I mean, he might be a little busy golfing right now, but I would ask Rob if I could, do you think you have maximized your opportunity with LeBron James, and specifically over the last few years, while it apparently, and Jeanie kind of lent her voice to this, while apparently you've been basically waiting for LeBron and his game to slip far enough that you could say, oh, finally, all right, you're not worth the max anymore. He is worth the max right now. He'll probably be worth near the max again next year, given that we aren't seeing too visible a slip from him athletically, especially in must-win games. He looks incredible when the Lakers' backs are up against the wall. And, you know, when did that change? And if I'm Luka, I don't know that he and LeBron are so close that they would have this kind of conversation. But if I'm Luka, I'm a little curious, like, at what stage are you going to be looking for what comes after me? Like, I'm not saying that Adu Thiero is obviously like the next Luka or something like that. But like, if the Lakers get a younger superstar somehow, some way, like, does Luka get so quickly supplanted as LeBron was? Is that something that stars have to be wary of? Because part of the reason that LeBron came to the Lakers in the first place was that Kobe contract and the smooth sailing that Kobe had while he was on that retirement tour. Now, Luka's presence there makes it a lot more difficult to have that retirement tour. But the nice thing is, if, let's say, LeBron decides to hang him up after this season, and he does go on a bit of a retirement tour this year, if that happens, LeBron wouldn't be as detrimental to winning as Kobe was post Achilles during that retirement tour. The point for the Lakers back then was to lose games. So they didn't care if Kobe shot 40 times a game. Right now, though, you have Luka. and you have LeBron, and you have the expectations that come with having Luka and LeBron, who are still both playing at a very high level. You have the expectations there to win with those guys while you can. And again, like if you look at this roster right now, it's probably a fifth or a sixth seed in the West. And then you're looking at like, you have to go through two of Houston and or Denver or OKC. Like, yeah, you might have a puncher's chance against one of those teams. Maybe you can, shock the world and beat both of them. And look, you have Luka and LeBron, but that's my point. It doesn't take crazy lifting to have a championship caliber team when your starting point is LeBron James still playing at the level that he is and Luka playing at the level that I think he's going to be playing at this year. And will Luka, if he's playing at the level that I think he's going to be playing at this year, be all that thrilled about all of the work he put in over the offseason and everything that he might be doing in the regular season during that I think he's going to have a bleep U season this year. If he's having that bleep U season, is he still going to be content with an out of position Rui Hachimura at small forward for the sake of maybe getting Giannis and Jokic? I guess what it all comes down to is if that's the plan, then you better fucking get those guys. Because if you don't, ask Ned Coletti how Mark Walter felt about him falling short of expectations with the Dodgers. All right, let's dive on into, we have two super comments here, two starred comments. So I will go ahead and play the most important clip on the show. Love it. Brings a smile to my face. Amon Brar writes, any update on Marcus Smart? Is there any interest from the Lakers in Ben Simmons? On the second part of that, I don't believe so. Now let's talk about Smart. And I wrote I wrote about this, and then I talked about this in the narration of that article on this morning's lowdown, which are RSS feed exclusive. So you guys got to go subscribe to the podcast feed there. But one thing that is going on in the NBA right now, and I went over this at the end of yesterday's show, but I'll do it again here, is the NFLification of contracts and contract decisions. And one of those contract decisions has been what happens to a player, especially a veteran player, on the final year of their deal. And what usually happens in the NFL is you'll get the report, Team X has told player Y that they can go and try to find a trade for themselves and get back to them. And what usually happens there is all of these other teams are like, oh, you're on the trade block? Huh. All right. Well, you're going to be on the waiver wire here shortly. So we'll just wait for that and not give up anything to get you unless they really, really like that player. And then you'll see some of those trades. But for the most part, NFL teams, they look at that player and they say, we'd really, really like to have you. Tell you what, come back to us when you're a free agent and we'll try to make it work. And eventually that team that is employing the player that is about to be waived, they waive that player and they move on as such. And you'll see some legitimately good NFL players either go for pennies on the dollar or just get waived outright and make their way, albeit at later stages of their careers, but they'll change teams after being cut. And it's just crazy to see some of these names that get cut whenever they are. And that's happening in the NBA now, where you see DeAndre Ayton, who was making $35 or whatever $million coming into the season, he gets bought out. You have Bradley Beal negotiating a buyout right now with or being stretched and waived potentially by the Phoenix Suns, which, by the way, has been taking a really long time, right? Like, anybody else Notice how long that's taking. Let me just, okay, cool. Um, those contract buyouts don't normally take that long. But, anyway, you have Beal potentially being waived and stretched or just waived outright. You have Damian Lillard get waived and stretched in Milwaukee. You have all kinds of veterans, therefore, on the final year of their contract. And I think the Lakers have kind of pumped the brakes on some of the decisions that they were looking to make potentially on or with their biannual exception. I think a lot of teams are, if they have any means of spending more than the minimum on a player, they're kind of holding off on the current free agent crop just to see what the potential free agent crop looks like. So you have Marcus Smart being monitored. You have CJ McCollum being monitored. You'll have Nikola Vucevic being monitored. You'll have all any number of players. Again, if they are on the final year of their deal, teams around the league are kind of checking in to see, all right, how's it looking? They're talking to agents. They're doing their background checks, obviously legally. And I think this is going to be especially prevalent whenever everybody gets to Vegas this weekend. That's probably going to be the conversation I have more often than just about any other one with whichever agents I talk to. Is going to be like, so your guy, how's it looking? Where would he like to play? Would he take the minimum? All of that stuff. And when you ask about Marcus Smart, that the update is that the Lakers, as well as all of these teams around the league, are waiting to see, especially with Washington. I think they have 19 contracts on their books right now. That number is going to have to come down to 15 at some point before the regular season begins. I forget what the deadline is on that. But that number is going to have to come down. And whenever it comes down, these teams are going to want to be flexible enough to pounce on some of those players. Now, Marcus Smart, right, has been pretty ravaged by injuries over the last couple of years and looked a little toasty even when he was out there. So that's not ideal. But CJ McCollum has been useful. Is he going to be bought out? Any number of, players like that who I think could help some of these teams in ways that most buyout players aren't typically helpful. I do find myself wondering if this is going to be the norm moving forward, in that, like, what kinds of players are going to have these big, expiring tags on them heading into that final year of the contract. I think a lot of these guys are going to, these teams are going to be signing partially guaranteed contracts or non-guaranteed contracts or shorter contracts to protect themselves a little bit more, as flexibility is going to be kind of the name of the game in this CBA. So this might be kind of an outlier off season in terms of the caliber of players who might eventually be bought out. But and also, like, buyouts are a two-way street unless a team just waives somebody outright. We saw a couple of years ago the Toronto Raptors waived Spencer Dinwiddie outright. Never since, he's been a minimum player after he signed with the Lakers. And since then, he has been basically a minimum player or close to a minimum player. Andre Drummond, same kind of thing, just slightly above the minimum for him. So these players, typically don't want, and this is, I think, what's going on here with Bradley Beal. It's like, you're asking me to take $14 million less than I could have if I just played out the final 2 years of my contract. And I'm probably going to be seen as either an exception level type player or a minimum type player. Where am I going to recoup that $14 million from? And by the way, what kind of complicates it, one of the things I've noticed, obviously a ton of reporting that the Clippers are seen as the favorite for Beal if and when he gets bought out, which makes sense for a couple of reasons. One, the Clippers have a starting gig to be able to offer Beal. I know that he values starting potentially. The other part of it too is that they would be using non-taxpayer mid-level exception money and can offer a little bit more of that money than the Lakers can. Also, if the Lakers sign Bradley Beal in the buyout market, they would be doing so with their biannual exception, which means whatever contract that Beal signs with the Lakers would have to be for 2 years. Whereas I think Beal would prefer to sign the contract that he has that he gets this year, player option for the second year, but would like to hit the free agent market next year when there's a lot more cap space available to a lot of these teams. So there's a lot going on there. But essentially, with a lot of these buyouts and with a lot of these teams that have anything to offer above the minimum, they're all kind of saying, let's hold off to some of these other players who are currently on the market to see what they can get on the buyout market. R. Jones 813 LAL writes, her rumors, are they legit reports or Laker fan wish casting? I think probably a little bit more of the latter. If I had to guess, the problem is it's Joe Dumars, and he's an insane person, and he runs his team like an insane person. I don't think he's actually an insane person. I've never met Joe Dumars. I don't have anything to say about the guy personally, but he has not been a very good GM for a long time. You know, he made some good decisions in building up that Detroit team that wound up winning a championship, but kind of sort of ever since has been on an ugly swing. And I mean, New Orleans fans were pissed when they hired Dumars to replace David Griffin, especially without really looking at anybody else. So, and then one of the first decisions that Dumars made when he gets to New Orleans is to trade their unprotected draft pick for next season for the chance to take Derek Queen, and open himself up to a world where Zion potentially gets hurt, other guys potentially get hurt, and they could send over a very high and valuable draft pick in the Cam Boozer draft years. So, yeah, it's honestly, R. Jones, kind of difficult for me to answer this definitively because nobody really knows what Dumars is going to get up to. So, I definitely think there's a possibility of it. I would imagine Herb Jones would cost Reeves, or yeah, I don't think the Lakers have enough to get Jones compared to some of the offers that New Orleans would be able to field for him without giving up Reeves. So that's something that you have to think about. The other thing too is we just talked a lot about Andrew Wiggins and how his contract affects the books moving forward. I think the Lakers would be a little bit more open to Jones than Wiggins in this regard, but it would make the Lakers a little bit less flexible cap wise, and that needs to be factored into it as well. But yeah, I really like Herb Jones. I think it would be a perfect fit alongside Luka and LeBron for that matter, and would fit a need that the Lakers have in the more immediate sense. I see, somebody asking, let's see, have they contacted the Pelicans? That R. Jones is asking that too. So, yeah, they've. Here's the thing: a lot of these teams have a lot of conversations about all of their guys all the time, and especially this time of year, you'll have GMs and stuff calling each other just to say, "Hey, I'm hearing something about this guy being potentially available. Is he? What's the price looking like? Okay, cool. Thank you. Click." So to that extent, yeah, the Lakers have contacted the Pelicans about Herb Jones. But has it gotten so far as to talk about specific names, let alone an offer? That I haven't heard. Alicia Clark Jones. Well, thank you very much, Alicia, for the super comment. I really appreciate it. I am going to go ahead and pop off here and get my kids ready to go to my daughter's basketball game. If anything happens, obviously, in the meantime, while I'm at my daughter's basketball game or practice or whatever, that it's a clinic, then I will rush home and record and all of that good stuff. And yeah, I will. You know what, man? Thank you very much. I've felt a lot of love the last couple of days here. I know a lot of people have seen the way people have been kind of talking to me on Twitter. The way that you guys have kind of responded in some spots has really meant a lot to me. And the support obviously means a ton to me too. So thank you guys for that. Thank you for listening. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Have a great rest of your evening. Make somebody else's, and I will talk to you whenever I talk to you. Have a good one, everybody.